Welcome to the NetSetter podcast. I'm your host, Blake Minho Kim. Join me as we focus on demystifying the innovations driving the new internet. For episode 10, we spoke with Abi Dharshan, product lead at Zerion, the leading Web3 wallet, dApp, and onchain ecosystem. Abi is a Zerion OG and an investor at Social Graph Ventures, and we had a great time jamming on Zerion's fast-growing ecosystem and waxing poetic on all things onchain. And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, give us a like, and a 5-star review. Thank you so much, and let's get on with the show. All right, let's go. How you doing, Abi? How you doing today?
Hey Blake, doing well. I mean, it's always something new in this market right now, right? You feel me?
There's always something new, and I think we'll probably touch on some of those things. But
For
yeah,
sure.
what's happening right now? The market's going crazy, and yeah, we'll dive into the specifics shortly. But let's just dive straight into it. I'm really excited for this conversation, and yeah, I'm just very pumped for it. So we always like to start with an origin story. So we'd love to have you tell me and our audiences just about yourself and kind of like your journey to this crazy place that we call Web3, and how did you end up on Zerion, and how's that journey been? And just tell us the story, and then we'll start from there.
Yeah, for sure. I think like a lot of people here, I got into the space in the peak of a bull market, 2017, to be precise. I was in San Francisco. My roommate was super into crypto. The usual story, right? I just got roped into the Ethereum, hacker house
Yeah.
for a weekend, and like I think a couple months later, I was like, all right, this is a really cool space. I'm really bored of
Mhm.
building, I'd say like Web2 SaaS products.
Yeah.
And
Calendar apps and productivity apps for
exactly,
more
yeah.
enterprise B2B SaaS. Yeah.
I mean,
Ooh, we
it's
need more
fun
of those.
until like you really kind of I'd say like graduate past a certain point, and you're like, okay, there's
Yeah.
nothing really new happening in this space. But long story short,
Yeah.
we built back then what was the first ever NFT marketplace called dBase. So it's like decentralized eBay, and this was around the time when there was OpenSea, Rarebits, a couple of the early players. And
Yeah.
what we really saw was that I'll link this to Zerion in a bit, but like there
Mhm.
were about 4 or 5 NFT platforms coming out. It was CryptoKitties, Chibi Fighters,
Yeah.
MLB Heroes. We really built the first front end where you can aggregate all of these marketplaces, and it was almost like a discovery feed where
Ooh.
like Product Hunt, you just be able to see new NFT drops as they go live. But then this was awesome. We were also in university. I went to a university called
Mhm.
Minerva here in San Francisco, so we were traveling around the
Nice.
world every semester, and very much aligned with this crypto ethos of like hacker
That's
houses,
fucking great.
states,
Yeah.
whatever. So we found ourselves in Japan, 2018 summer, building this out. And long story short, it was a depth of the bear market. We went to this conference called Nifty in Hong Kong back then, which was the first ever NFT conference. And I
Oh,
remember
wow.
there were about 300 attendees in that conference, and there were about 300 monthly active users in the NFT space. So literally everyone in that conference was the NFT industry. And
It
that's
was
when
the
we
beginning, the OGs.
the
Yeah.
beginning or the end. I mean, back then it felt like the end, right?
Mhm.
So that was a really fun time, but like literally, I think no company survived that bear market except for OpenSea. They were relentless and like just pushing through, releasing the NFT API that they had back in 2019, building developer tooling. So like props to them. But like, long story short, I then got into the Web2 space, worked with Wolfram for a bit. So Wolfram's this
Mhm.
very traditional computing firm, and I kind of built a couple cool projects there. Most notable one was like when you open up Siri in your iPhone and you ask it a very complex mathematical question, it would actually use
Ah.
data under the hood. So we did that, Apple integration,
Oh,
and
that's how that works.
yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't
I
know.
mean, anything that you want to do with derivatives and integrals and whatever, right? Like it's a lot easier there.
Ah.
But then 2020, funny story here.
Yep.
Found myself in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and this was when I think like DeFi,
Yep.
stable coins were really just starting to become not even just mainstream, but like an idea that could be viable. And until then, all you
Yep.
had was volatile assets, right? So I saw, I remember in a shop in Buenos Aires, people sending and receiving DAI. So that was the first time I even heard about DAI. I think it was a little bit later, relative to a lot
Oh
of the
my
DeFi.
God. That's
And
amazing.
when I saw the interface, right, like it was this app called Zerion, and I was super curious,
Mhm.
like, how does this work? Like, it was actually like a dollar pegged like stable coin. went down the rabbit hole, realized the founder of Zerion was a dropout from my class in Minerva, and we were working together on a bunch of projects earlier. And they hadn't raised yet, and it was purely just a hackathon project they built to solve a personal problem, which was again kind of similar to dBay. There was this Cambrian explosion of DeFi protocols, and people are using
Mhm.
spreadsheets, and like there was a big UX gap there in bridging.
Huge.
Kind of like I've done all these actions on multiple platforms. I have no idea where my assets sit right now.
Mhm.
Let's build a tracker for that. So yeah, like we kind of I just joined Zerion back then. I was like, this was a almost like an aha moment of like, hey, this is going to be huge. Stablecoins are going to unlock this whole capital asset class with a lot more
Yeah.
layers up. And ever since, yeah, we've been building cool UX and products at Zerion. We started out with this portfolio tracker, and yeah, it's been a long journey, man. We've started from a team of 4 back then to like about 50 right now in 21 countries. So I'd say like
Oh
the
man.
evolution along with the space has come with its ups and downs, but I've been as you can see here, a self-custodial human ever since. Yeah, that's been a journey.
Hell yeah, man. I need one of those sweatshirts. Can you bring me one when we're in a CC or something? I don't know.
Definitely, yeah. Oh yeah,
If you have any extra. No, dude, that's amazing. And thank you for like kind of taking us through that journey. And it's so funny that it's always those moments when you just like see when you see it in the wild, it like really sparks that curiosity and the fact that you're able to do it in Buenos Aires where I feel like the use case for crypto is probably stronger than anywhere else, right?
oh,
And
100%.
so
And
it just
it's
makes a lot
also
of sense.
serendipity, right? Like a lot of it in hindsight is just, hey, like the
Hmm.
space is so small that someone you worked with like 5 years back or someone you helped, in a conference like a couple years ago, they all just come back. So I
Hmm.
think like it was a series of moments where even for Zerion, the product has been evolved like that. Like the decision to build a wallet, the decision to
Yeah.
like just do a lot of things that we did was very much driven by intuition more than even data.
I love it. Well, and actually, let's dive into that because I mean, just transparently speaking, right? Like I personally, and that's actually how we know each other, right? Is I've
Yeah.
been personally shilling Zerion on Telegram channels all over because just from a personal like Web3 user experience, right? I think like many people, I onboarded into the space with MetaMask a while ago, and you realize how challenging that experience is, and then you start to basically that problem you just talked about, right? Of you do a bunch of things, you can't see it all in one place, was very much the problem that I had, and it was challenging because it felt like they're like DeFi apps, they're like NFT apps, and there are all these very specific wallets that
Mhm.
didn't quite do all the things I was looking for. So, anyways, all that to say, it's been exciting to kind of watch your guys' journey. But I guess for the audience and people listening, right? Like, could you kind of take us through the evolution of Zero? So, you're talking about the wallet tracker. You're talking about the wallet. I mean, there are some more recent announcements you guys just made. Um, there's like this whole ecosystem. So, we'd love to. I always love a narrative and like, how did that all evolve and how's it going? I guess we can start there.
Yeah, since you said narratives, I'll start with like the
Yeah.
common theme here. The common theme has always been we ourselves, we're degens, we're on-chain users, right? Every single product innovation that we've released has always been around how can we overcome an obvious and frustrating barrier
Hmm.
that a user experiences. So, in that regard, the first obvious and frustrating barrier was all right. We have a lot of DeFi protocols. You can't keep track of them. Build a portfolio tracker. The second obvious
Hmm.
and frustrating barrier later in 2020 was when we dropped essentially this single click transaction experience where you could not
Hmm.
just swap, but you could actually go from any token into a liquidity pool or into a more complex derivative without any of that equal pair of assets needed and like gas and all of
Hmm.
that factored away. So that was the second iteration. That was when we launched.
Nice.
It was not a static portfolio tracker. It was now like a dynamic portfolio tracker. And this was huge, right?
Yeah.
Because back then, if you've used Uniswap or some of the other platforms, and you wanted to enter a liquidity pool or even do something basic, right? You needed to have a lot of gas. B, you needed to have like half of each token pair, and we just abstracted a lot of that under the hood through our own smart contracts. So that was number two.
Mm.
And then I think like a year after, we started talking to a lot of the other wallet providers, dexes, even our own investors, and we realized that um, the there was two trends that were happening in parallel. One, um, having retention in the space, or even just having a mechanism for retention, was really hard. And this is just purely due to the cyclical nature of not just capital, but also the market in general. So like you didn't have an incentive to really have your capital be in a certain platform unless you got an airdrop or you got something to farm. And also the space just moved so fast, and it
Mhm.
became so volatile that as a portfolio tracker, there is going to be like 100 different portfolio trackers that show up, and everyone's going to
Yeah.
try to compete for the same user and also struggle to monetize. You can't really like expect users to pay beyond swap
Yeah.
fees, right? So that was one trend, and the other trend was, I think, wallets increasingly, we saw as like the core driver of retention in this space, at least from a user's
Mhm.
perspective. Think about what a wallet represents, right? I think overarchingly it kind of represents your identity in the space. It's a
Mhm.
historical overview of all the
Yeah.
transactions, people you've met, things you've done, pull-ups you've collected. But also, like, if you think of an analogy here, it's kind of like your checking account. You might have
Mhm.
multiple checking accounts for multiple reasons, but once you really love a certain bank or a certain banking experience, you don't like your switching costs are a little bit higher than, oh, you just have an asset in this protocol, you want to unstake it and move it to another
Yeah.
protocol. So that really got us thinking, and we said, what do we do best internally? We have a solid engineering team and a design team, and we've always been focused on building, again, like coming back to what I said earlier, this like user experience that overcomes barriers.
Mhm.
So that got us to dropping the wallet a year and a half back. I say dropping the wallet because along with the wallet, we had DNA, we had a bunch of growth hacks. It was almost like this whole like, in retrospect, it looked really organized, but it was for us, it was just like, let's just experiment. Let's experiment as much as possible because we have the stack that's
Mhm.
multi-platform. We're not just restricted to like an extension or a web app. We also have mobile apps. We even have an Apple Watch app where you can put your NFTs as
Oh
an Apple
wow.
Watch
I
face.
didn't know that part.
Do that. Yeah. So like we wanted to see that we wanted to see how we could blend all of these platforms together and release this wallet. So that happened, I think, a year and a half back, and the core focus of the wallet was let's make this the best EOA wallet experience possible,
Yeah.
and we didn't choose to do EA or any other I guess 4337 like wallet purely because we wanted this to be multi-chain, and at least when we released this, I think the infrastructure needed to build a very user-friendly multi-chain wallet that also connected with all existing dApps just made it an obvious choice for us to go the EOA route. And
Yeah.
I'd say that, yeah, more recently, if you think about what's the next obvious frustrating barrier that users experience, for us, we
Mhm.
really think that this is around gas and around the notion of like, now that you're
Mhm.
having like several chains come up, now that you're having like this almost like
Yeah.
I'd say narrative farming of, hey, like we're launching the next major roll up, next major
Mhm.
layer two that's gonna change kind of like how you do things in the space. But if you really ask why and dig deeper, it really comes to like, hey, we're just trying to like bundle together a bunch of stacks and like build something that could give us more revenue under the hood. So
Mhm.
for us now, I think we really see like three main problems, and that's why we're kind of announcing the chain, and we're really like blending what we had with the wallet, the dApp, our
Yeah.
API, and eventually build a chain. So the three main kind of issues we see is like, one is gas. Even though gas costs have reduced a lot, um, we always still, even as like users in the space, find ourselves where maybe you want to use a dApp in Polygon, you don't have Matic. Like
Yeah.
on ramping Matic is really tricky. I might actually
It's a
ask you or
pain.
another
Yeah.
friend OTC if you could just send me some Matic to cover our transaction,
Yeah.
right? Usually what ends up happening. So solving the
I
gas
see where
issue,
this is going.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Well, like this is one of those things where I think that's the main one key issue that we identify right now. Like tackling gas fees can only be made possible if we have a chain like Zero. It can't be made
Mm.
possible natively on a wallet unless we subsidize gas fees, which again is not like a innovation; it's purely just a VC funded subsidy. That's
Yeah.
number one. Number two is what I said with cross chain complexity. Like this just means more headaches. Like from a user's
Yeah.
perspective, I'll be honest, like beyond EVM, I also do stuff on Solana. I do stuff, with my
Yeah.
Kepler wallet, and it's really getting tricky to like
It's hard to manage.
the mental load. Yeah, exactly. Like the mental load itself is like really overwhelming. But beyond that, I think it's a big opportunity for UX. The final hurdle I see is like wallet recovery and security. We've talked about this a lot, but like there's
Mm,
still a million stories of you either getting hacked. I myself got hacked while using my MetaMask a year and a half back, purely
mm.
from a phishing website, right? And you also have wallet recovery, where you can kind of see why this if you want to really reach mainstream audiences, this is a big key factor that will
Yeah,
really help us get there. So all of these reasons are, I guess, these are big challenges that we see right now, and that's one of the big reasons why we've recently announced Zero, which would be the
mm.
Zero Network would be like the main I'd say like next key innovation that we plan to release. And yeah, I can go deep into this talking a lot, but like let's pause there.
I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, there's so much. Like I'm trying to like digest it all, right? But I mean, I think we can like almost start our way backwards. So, I mean, that's such a interesting thing. I mean, let's dive into that, right? Like the idea that I think everyone is, it's funny, like as EVM starts to scale and decentralize over time, I think so many people are like, they're building more L2s and then they're building L3s and then at some point it'll be L4, right? We're seeing that with like OP, EVM, ETH, OP, base, degen, and it just keeps going, right?
Yeah.
But would love to better understand, like with Zero, like is it, tell us more about it because I actually I saw the announcement, but I didn't get to dig too deep into it. Like what stack is it built on? Like and how's it going to work on the back end? Like we could nerd out a bit here. I think it would be fun.
Yeah, I like getting right into the alpha. Like before that, I'll do preface by
Oh,
saying
okay. Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
no, I'll do preface by saying that I'll share what I can, but like a lot of the
yeah.
decisions are also iterative. So it's really just a
Mm,
simple way of saying, we actually don't
yeah,
know the end phase, and we wanna set this, I'd say like this open space for experimentation
yeah.
and see where it leads,
Mm,
right? But
I like
like,
it.
what does the gasless experience really mean, right? This means,
Hmm.
okay, if you deploy Uniswap on Zero, that unlocks gasless trading. If you deploy
Yeah.
Zora on Zero, you unlock gasless content. If you deploy a game on Zero, it's really like, you can onboard more users and increase retention to your game by removing the
Hmm.
gas element altogether. So that's really like the key unlock that we'd have with the gasless
Yeah.
experience. On the stack, I'll be honest with you, like we've talked with, all the, whether it's
Yeah.
Superchain, whether it's ZK, whether it's Arbitrum, I'd say like the actual decision is trivial. We'll be announcing that quite
Yeah.
shortly,
Fair enough.
just
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we're getting to a point where these are really just a like ecosystem plays. Like, oh, you want to be part of OP's ecosystem to like maybe be
Yeah.
closer to a certain network that's already live there, or it's
Yeah.
it's those like expertise plays where maybe you want to launch an
Hmm.
Arbitrum if you're very DeFi focused, because Arbit,
Yeah.
really is the most tested platform out there. So I'd say like rather than focus on that, um, I'll talk about again what marketers love the best, which is the narrative. So here, right, like
Yes.
along with what Zerion has built with the wallet in the last year or so, we also have heavily helped other wallets and other dApps, build their user
Yes.
experiences. So this is with the B2B API, and really the
Hmm.
API is a simple way of us saying that, hey, we have a solid data moat at Zerion.
Hmm.
We've rather than
Through the dApp that you've had for so long, right?
yeah,
And the
no,
wallet
through
and
the
like
dApp,
all
through the
the data
wallet,
connection.
through
Yeah.
the trading, kind of one-click swap that I talked about. All of these,
Yeah.
we didn't rely on external vendors. We built these all as open source systems or closed source,
Yeah.
like APIs internally. And we've had to do this while experiencing periods in the last bull market where, the app was literally down for days because of the volume that we got, right? So we had to scale our load. We had to
Yeah.
like hire engineers. So that has been a big play where we realized that we've built this ecosystem of wallets, dApps, folks like Uniswap, Rainbow, Wallet Connect, tools that you use
Yeah.
every day that rely on our infrastructure. Yeah, so we're seeing this trend of like infra products. I'd say almost like super products, right? Whether it's safe, whether it's sort of like other dApps, Zora or whatnot, that have a
Hmm.
similar product positioning. So if you take Zora for example, Zora has they started off with their dApp, really making it
Yeah.
very easy for you to create and collect content by minting them. Then they had their Zora NFT APIs. A lot of platforms actually use Zora's NFT API. And then more
Yep.
recently, they launched a chain, which is not just a way for them to monetize, through
Yep.
sequencer and whatnot, but like it also really adds an element of like, oh, now you could have Enjoy, you could have meme coins, you could have
Yep.
really whatever kind of grow bottom up from that, as long as they are a good choice for dApps to consider. And there's
Yep.
a ton of factors that go into that. So for us, the way we look at Zero is in a way similar. Like it's almost like this like feedback loop where we have
Mm.
this wallet that's now trusted by over 500,000 monthly active users. We have this dApp that a lot of people recognize us for as a portfolio tracker. Now,
Yep.
what really enables this growth flywheel is the fact that we will have the wallet, and this distribution through the wallet, but also like we'll have a place where content creators, developers, or whatnot could deploy and get access not just to Zerion's users, but also like
Mm.
system of users that we've created. So the new user volume is encouraged, and that in turn will also drive more transactions in TVL. Like that's really, I'd say, like the core why as to like we're launching the wallet,
Yeah.
launching Zero chain. Um,
Yeah.
but like yeah, in terms of the stack, I'd say like feature native account abstraction within the chain. So this
Ah.
would kind of talk about like what Vitalik has been mentioning recently, really just like for security and easy recovery. But I don't want to get too technical there. TLDR is that
Yeah.
we want to enable the ultimate, on-chain experience, not just for Zerion, but for any wallet user. And that would be
If you're looking
powered.
for native account abstraction, there's a couple I can think of, but there's
Oh,
one
for
in
sure.
mind. Yeah. But anyway,
Safe is
yeah.
as well. And I think that's probably the team that we will be going with another alpha to drop. But like, yeah, there's
Let's
a lot of
go.
cool vendors here. Beyond vendors, I think it's really more about what problem do you want to solve and
It's
just
about the
cool.
experience. And this is the
Exactly.
fun part too, right? Because even as you're talking about this entire, like, it's a funny thing because I don't, I would bet, and I don't know if you've heard otherwise, but I think through my, even my own network, I feel like most people would primarily know Zerion for the wallet, even though
Correct.
you may have interacted with these other things, right? Because I've definitely interacted with the dApp, but I guess I never really put it together. I was like, oh, there's a whole thing here, right? And then I only know about the API because we've chatted about it in some capacity, and so to really like understand this whole ecosystem and this file you guys have built it's pretty interesting because it's almost like a Web 2 vertically integrated model, but it's
Mm.
also closed but not closed in a sense because it's somewhat open source. Right? Like you have open APIs, but it's still you're incentivized to participate with this entire Zerion ecosystem in some way, right?
Yeah, that's the boring B2B SaaS layer within the
Yeah.
company. Just given how we've had to structure it. Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also like now that you say it, right? Like the fact that you think most people think of us as a wallet is interesting because I would still say that there's like almost two categories of people we meet at conferences, right? Like just as an example,
Ah, okay.
one would
Yes.
be like the old almost like the old age of crypto degens
Yeah,
where
yeah.
like, oh, like Zerion the portfolio tracker, or like, hey Zerion the tool that like
Ah,
helped me find an airdrop like back in the day
yeah.
that I just like out on. And one of the large, I'd say like one of the large initiatives that Alex and our growth team has actually been like focused
Hmm.
on. So testimony to them. But like in the last 6 months, they've like honestly, I think like focused on how do I change this vision of like Zerion being a portfolio tracker to like Zerion being a wallet. And now we're at that point where
Mm.
we're grappling with like multiple like perceptions of what Zerion is, right? Like we're not just like a wallet or a portfolio tracker or like a wallet API,
Yeah,
but like we're trying to be this like network. That's why we say network and
yeah.
not. So like
I
yeah,
like it.
it's nice validation that you think most people think of us as a wallet. So like we're doing something right there, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, because it's funny. Yeah. Anyways, I won't go like talking about. Well, actually, that's an interesting question. Is like, and then as you guys are growing, and I don't know, like it's not quite. It's a very complicated answer, but I guess there is a natural curiosity of like, who do you guys consider competitors? I guess are because because you guys are doing by the very nature of doing so many things, you theoretically have many and you have very few. It depends on how you perceive or interpret that question, I guess. But curious how
Yeah,
you think about that.
no, it's a good question, and I'd say like a lot of it is actually even more than competition in this space specifically, like cohesion, right? Like you're actually trying to
Hmm.
like work together with a lot of your competitors,
Yes.
especially if you
Which is my
all
favorite part about Web3. Like we
the
all want
best
a moat, but in
thing.
this place, you don't, you kind of have a moat, but you don't need it, and it depends.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's about
you're smart
collaboration.
enough to like avoid zero sum games, at least like in
Yeah.
most verticals, right? But like I'd say like if you're being more optimistic, like on the chain level, for example, Base is doing a fantastic job of like not just basically
Hmm.
creating a new ecosystem of meme clients, like social apps, basically from nothing. But also they have
Hmm.
a lot of things going right for them. Like Jesse single handedly is like managing all of their community. They've
Yeah.
been like fantastic with like how they've deployed on OP. So like if you think about competitors, like I would really say like there's like a gold standard of chains right now, and Base is setting that.
Hmm.
And then if you think about
Yeah.
it in terms of wallets, right, like there's a lot of really good wallets. Like I personally have been testing out. I think Rabi just launched this like subsidized
Hmm.
gas feature today, where they're basically just paying out of pocket for gas, which is I guess a
Yeah.
more like simple way of saying zero, but like it's just like from our pocket instead of having a whole complex chain
Yeah.
being. But like Rabi, Coinbase Wallet, MetaMask, they're all fantastic wallets. Phantom as well. So I'd say on the wallet level, it'll be oversimplification if they're like, oh, they are our competitors, because
Hmm.
I'd say like every one of them has a different way to monetize, has a different moat. Like MetaMask
Yeah.
purely monetizes on swap fees. We actually monetize
Hmm.
more on the B layer. So it's almost like we can focus on giving the users a better user experience rather
Yeah.
than like charge the hell out of every function that you do. So like imagine if we didn't have the B2B layer, maybe we'd have to charge you for just like following a wallet on Zerion, which is like really
Yeah.
like the antithesis to like what we want to do. I think like a bunch of other wallets monetize in different ways. So like yeah, they're all, I'd say, like folks who inspire us in like different parts of what they do. But there is no like if I wanted to draw a Venn diagram, it would be like three different Venn diagrams, and like it's not just like
Yeah. Yeah.
one
I think
circle.
that's
Yeah.
the thing. It's like I think as you're saying, like everyone's got their unique flavors, and it really comes down to like where the money flows because everything comes from that. Or like if you're making money here and they're making money here, you can collaborate on these fronts. You just
Yeah,
don't want to mess
exactly.
with these parts, you know.
For sure. I mean,
And
rather than even
the pie's so
more like
big. We're barely.
exactly.
Oh, sorry, the lag. Yeah, yeah.
No, no, exactly. You
But
kind of took the words out of my mouth. I was just gonna say like the market is so big where a lot of users also use multiple wallets, or there's just
yeah,
like oftentimes overlap, but in a good way. Like you don't really
yeah.
have you're not trying to like always grow market share. It's more like you're trying to create a new
I have a
market.
folder called crypto on my iPhone, and it's
Yeah,
about like 12, 15, 20 different wallets, wallet trackers, everything. And then and
yeah.
sometimes you have to, unfortunately, because like not everything is supported on every single one, right?
Oh, for sure, man. Well, I'll send you a few
Yeah,
test of more wallets that I've been testing out. So good. Like that's the thing.
send
Like
it.
I still like have like 50 wallets, just like you do. Where it's
Yeah,
like we still give feedback to other wallets, and like we're kind of working together, even if there's literally nothing in
let's
it for us.
go. So are
We
you
just
guys
need
gonna
more.
form like the global wallet coalition, you know?
Well, actually, Wallet Connect has this. They actually have like they host a Wallet
Ah,
Con, and we help them a lot. We actually had an in-person Wallet
amazing.
Con that week in
That's
Lisbon
so
last week,
good.
where it was like Safe, Wallet Connect, Coinbase, MetaMask. Basically, everyone just
Wait,
showed up in
when
person,
was
and we.
that? Was that just now, or was that
It was in
before?
Portugal a month ago, so I believe like around April or March.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
so we
okay.
do have like I
That's
guess these
amazing.
like wallet mafias or whatever as you'd call them, but like it's still like we're
The
working
new
together.
big bank with the wallet mafia. But hopefully
Well,
you guys are fighting for us. It's a good thing. I'm not concerned. Yeah.
no, we're just losing our hair over how do we secure users better, or like how do we make permission.
Self-custodial. Well, because that's a funny thing, right? Like quick, like side rant is like,
Yeah.
I we obviously believe in the values and the virtue of having self-custodial wallets, but the challenge is like, and as you were talking about, account recovery and like allowing people to have maybe it's like what's the default is an
Mhm.
interesting way of thinking about it because like within traditional finance today, it's like the default is not really self-custodial, right? Like I put my money in a bank, but then there are bank conditions that can say, no, we're not going to give you your money back unless but within
Right.
crypto, if you're self-custodial, you can do, but at the same time, if I, can't get into my bank account for whatever reason, they'll fix it all for me. But in
Yeah.
crypto right now, you lose your private keys and that's it. Like, and I
You're
think most
responsible.
people aren't equipped to handle that, right?
Yeah.
Like crypto is such a small subsection, but
Yeah.
and I love that because that's what you guys are working on. And it sounds like now if there's potentially native account restriction and all that, it's going to get even easier. So
Yeah.
exciting stuff.
Because like
Yeah.
follow up the rant, right? Like you shouldn't need to be responsible for all of this, like in an ideal
Yeah.
world, right? You don't need to be. It's being self-custodial doesn't just mean like, oh, like, you've got to be like doing your due diligence and all of that. I think it's almost like a way of like, it's mutually responsibility. Like it's mutual
Yeah.
responsibility. Like, you're responsible, but also the app or interface that you interact with should, for example, show you, a security warning when you're, transacting, and like make it very easy for you to understand what you're actually doing. So I think it's like we're almost seeing this now, across the board with,
Yeah.
apps and like the language we use as well, right? Like I think we've gone to from a point where crypto in general was like, we intentionally had buzzwords and complex jargon just to like make it sound cool and fancy and all of that. But like
Yeah.
now it's, I think, like becoming a lot more simplified. But yeah, we're still definitely nowhere near where we can be, and that's the goal.
We are becoming more simplified, but are we becoming, what is it? Intersubjectively work simplified? I don't know. Like, there,
Yeah,
there are ways of simplifying, and then there are other parts where I don't know. Like,
you're getting into
just putting
prediction.
that out there.
Like, yeah,
Yeah. And then we're just like creating more terminology. We're like, that's
yeah,
interesting. Um, I love this. I love this. Well, listen, I'd love to zoom out a bit from Zerion specifically and just talk about like general sentiment, feelings on a lot of different things. And some of it will tie to Zerion, some of it won't. But, you know, I think one of the things I love to always get a read on from, smart people who are in the trenches like yourself is right now, even, we were just talking about right before we started recording, is like we're entering May 2024, such a curious time where we just had this like massive initial, what to me feels like the beginning of a bull market for like 7 months. We're seeing this kind of like pullback, but at the same time, people are building, but I'd be curious, like as someone who's actually like in the trenches, seeing the data, like, how is it feeling to you, I guess? Because to me, it doesn't feel like anything's changed and people are still building some pretty incredible things. And that's the other thing is like, what's getting you excited about what's coming up the pipe? Like not just Zerion, but like in general for the industry.
no, great question. So number one, don't open your Zerion on days like today. Um, just if
You
you
guys
want
should
to,
have like a turn off when
yeah,
it
like
is too
mental
low.
health check or whatever. But no, jokes aside,
Yeah,
I'll tell you, like at least like once you've been in the space for more than two cycles, right? Like you kind of,
yeah,
I hope, would, just ignore anything related to like price number go up, like, hey,
yeah.
like someone raised like a $69 million round, like whatever, that doesn't matter. I feel like what I see now, there's like
Hmm.
multiple trends, right? Like one, um compared to last year, this time, like last year was heaven. Like it was like, everyone is like a telegram message away. There's only real like
Yeah,
high quality builders in the space. And obviously you start to see like the shift when markets go up like this, of
yeah,
a lot more like, new builders, which is not a bad thing, but a lot of grifters, a lot of like, folks coming
yeah.
in,
The
trying
Twitter DM's blowing up again, and you gotta
to.
ignore as many as you can.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I don't see that social sentiment changing at all. In fact, I think that's growing. So that's number one.
yeah,
Number two, I'm also involved. I'd say like both Zerion as a company as well as me individually, we're involved in like several other, like, we put angel checks into companies. I'm involved in
yeah,
social graph ventures. Another Web3 social investment DAO. Like in terms of like how I see like on the ground, on the trenches, like trends, I really don't see, like, I see like there's a like with Forecaster, with several of these like, like Web3 social apps, even with tools like
yeah,
Zerion, there's more awareness about like what you can build, and people realizing
yeah.
that, hey, like actually composability is again a powerful thing. Because in markets
Mhm.
like this where, you're seeing like chains, you're seeing like, layers of like, data identity, now even like wallet abstracting layers like Privy or like Capsule coming
Yeah,
about, think it's like super easy now to like actually launch an MVP and test, and validate ideas in this market, especially. So like I
yeah,
see a lot more of that as the narrative coming about. And if you want to get more specific, right, I'd say like, you're kind of like seeing. also like more interesting tools, trying to bring in maybe like AI, maybe institutional products, where like I even had a call earlier today with this company called Utila. They Utila.io, they just raised to build this institutional crypto operations platform. And they actually tell me that they work with network states, for example, like Prospera, or they work with like several like large financial institutions purely to like, they don't want to deal with safes themselves directly, right? With like a multi-sig
Mm-hmm.
wallet or whatever. So they just build an MPC wallet to help these like large complex organizations manage their users,
Oh,
batch payments, do like a lot of like I'd say like traditional financial tasks. So like what I'm seeing actually with a lot of the new companies that we're talking with, either on the API side or like in the investment
yeah.
side, there are a lot of new primitives that are actually being built out, and this comes about every cycle. Nothing really
Mm-hmm.
like
Yep.
new if you think about it, but like it's a sign that like um, you know you should just ignore anything that's happening in the market and just like actually focus on talking to like quality builders and placing, if you are a degen, placing your bets there. So that's fantastic. If you look at Zerion's metrics, though, on the other hand, yeah, I'd say like we don't really see any big shift or changes. In fact, like I don't know how we do it internally, but like we have this term called on-chain marketing that we coined a couple of years
Mm-hmm.
back, right? Where this is really, really more about like um, marketing with a Web3 ethos. So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
putting out links on Zora to like commemorate a launch, or like,
Mm-hmm.
having a mirror post rather than a Medium post. Like, I feel like on that side, in terms of social metrics, in terms of revenue, in terms of wallet users, our team's been busy shipping just like every other team. And if you think about interest coming in from, new partnerships, new, infra providers on wanting to experiment with, helping us in our product roadmap. That's been a fantastic signal as well. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it might be different for different teams in the space. Protocols might
Mm.
have some issues, more treasury management to do right now. But yeah, we've been lucky that we're just trying to zoom out at this point and think about what can we do, and also
Yeah.
what can we do to not get sucked into the hype, because that's also really tricky when things go really well. Like we had this whole
Yeah.
internal meeting, for example, like a month back, where it's like, hey, like what's our
Points.
policy on like shilling meme coins, or like how do we want to, like, as a
Yeah.
company, like it's kind of crazy, but it's true, right? Like now a
Yeah.
lot of companies are starting to actually hire legal teams and start to think more long term, like how do we not get sucked into euphoria. So I
Yeah.
actually feel like that's the harder thing to like prepare for. How do you not get sucked into irrational exuberance in markets like this, and
Mm.
focus on like kind of being grounded and think about, okay, what I'm building is actually just this product aimed to solve this
Yeah.
problem, and not this like VC filled buzzword narrative that we want to really push out.
Yeah, and I think you hit on some of that earlier, right? Like the things, the problems you're trying to solve, like the three that you mentioned earlier. I forget the first one, but the second one was around account abstraction and making it simple for people, and the third was around gas fees and whatnot, right?
Yeah,
And so
cross
like
chain complexity, and yeah, like what you said
crushing,
around.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, all three of those, right? Like if you can do that, you guys are going to be fine. And I think you guys are in a really incredible position to just like take advantage of things. And honestly, that was the correct answer, right? Because at the end of the day, like I personally, I feel the same sentiment, which is like, yeah, number one, you're in it long enough and it just kind of, it is
Yeah.
what it is. But also like, there's so much incredible stuff happening. And that's why I'm so excited to be here. And, you guys are launching a chain and everyone's launching a chain, but then there's a lot of cool consumer apps, which I think is actually very relevant. And we could talk about like social for a bit
Yeah.
because you're actually out in California. I don't know if this will date this too much. This will come out in a week, so it'll be fine. But you're out in California, you're there for FarCon. Like, how are you feeling? Like, do you feel like it's just funny to me because I guess for myself, for a long time, I was always excited about this idea of like consumer apps on blockchain. But timing is everything.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think like C Club really kicked off like the whole consumer crypto narrative. They were able to like really bring it to the masses in a way. And then Base hopped on. And then, so basically, like 2023 was like a big year. It felt like around
Mhm.
this idea of like this can really be a thing. And then it feels like this year there's a lot more momentum building, people investing in it, you guys literally investing in it through Social Graph Ventures. And then like these social fi apps actually starting to take off a bit. So curious to hear, you're thinking, is this the year that consumer finally begins to overtake infrastructure as a investment narrative or something like that? I
I
don't
thought it
know.
already happened, man. Like that's actually like kind of what
No.
I'm seeing on the ground. Like a consumer apps actually are a lot more lean and actually build the product versus like
Hmm.
infra, whatever companies, right? Like what I'm seeing. So this is the average persona of startups that are building in consumer. They are two people, max three, that have been bootstrapping, that hate VCs, that don't want to raise more than $1 million, that
Yeah.
purely want to focus on onboarding users, and they probably live out of their mom's basement. Like no kidding, this is like the average forecaster or like Web3
Yeah.
social grad holder in the last year or so, which is fantastic compared to like Stanford grad, no shade again, but
Yeah.
like whatever, like $100 million plus round before you even have a test net, not
Raises
even.
too much money for what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like I'd say like just answering that part of your question, 100%. Like I'd say like it's probably like a more long-term leveraged bet, but
No.
you're really betting on teams and founders rather than like hey like this
Yeah. At
G
early stage.
is
Yeah.
like perfect. Yeah, exactly. So I guess heading into Farcon, what do I think here? Number one, like we've seen like in terms of projects that we worked with, right? Like we've put in small checks into companies like Unlonely, which is like
Yeah.
Brian and how they've like built out this like Web3 like Twitch streaming platform, but making this super native. Yeah,
Can I drop a little bit of alpha, which
yeah,
is we've been talking on Lonely because the
like
NetZero podcast might be expanding its media formats.
yeah,
So we're very excited about Unlonely and all the cool stuff. I mean, we could like even the ephemeral token idea. I was talking to
yeah.
that team. Like there's so much interesting stuff you can do there in terms of like how you monetize a media show as opposed to a traditional. You have to always put ads. You have to get subscriptions. It's like,
Tip and all that.
you know,
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
it's
that's what we
fascinating.
love about the founders we're working with. Like, we're actually going to be dropping a 30-minute token live with Seed Club and Unlonely this Saturday. So that's another
Oh
thing, right?
yeah.
I'm excited for FarCon just because, like, I'm honestly right now in an energy saving mode where I'm like, I know I'm going to be like, holy shit, there's like a million things that's like incredible in the space. But
Yeah.
that's the energy I feel like every part of what we're doing at FarCon as well, right? Like the events are on events.xyz, the tickets are on Unlock Protocol. Like we're getting to a point where I think this would be the most like on-chain conference IRL, and that's their whole like
Ooh,
right. It's
let's
like you
go.
are IRL. That's like kind of what they've been
Yeah.
pushing a lot. So that's how I feel heading into FarCon. And since we talked about Unlonely, like a lot of the companies that we worked with on the social layer, kind of what you said
Yeah.
around consumer social. Will we get the first app to reach 100 million users this year that has crypto under the hood? I don't think so. But I actually think what's more relevant is actually like apps that like start off as like movements, like
No.
Unlonely, like you're seeing with Forecaster, also infra that powers these like Airstack or Nana or a lot of these tools, like they shouldn't
Hyper
be.
sub
Oh,
subscriptions.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so I think this like layer that's starting to build out, like we would actually see product market fit first for Web3
Yeah.
citizens, like for people like us who are in the trenches in the space. And only then will it actually make sense to even think about how do we make this like, product for the masses? Because like users, I mean, this, no rocket science. They don't give a shit what's
Yeah.
under the hood as long as it solves a problem for them, right? Like
Yeah.
if I don't know if air chat, everyone's been talking about air chat, right? Like if that used crypto tipping under the hood, but it was really just something you on
No.
ramp through like your bank account, like that's cool, but like that's not a Web3 native product then. So I think like we should stop probably like having a goal that's like against what's actually happening in the space, which is let's
Yeah.
iterate and build cool experiences that we can actually validate and test in real life. And yeah, I
Yeah.
mean 100% agree on kind of like what you said around this year is the year when we'll actually see more awareness on consumer social. Like I did this
Yeah.
workshop at DeFi in Turkey last year. It was an IRL workshop on how do you stalk your friends. Like literally, how do you like what is an ENS? Starting from what is an ENS to like how do you
Yeah.
like push like follow your friends' trades with push notifications in
You
Zerion?
know, you know how I follow? Yeah, I go on
Yeah,
Zerion and I add their ENS and I'm tracking.
yeah,
I have
literally.
a whole watch list.
No, so like we started with that, and now like Alex and Buga from our team, we just run this whole like chain stalkers,
Yeah.
podcast and like show
Which
on
I
Unload.
love, by the way. It's a
Yeah,
genius format. It's so
I think
good.
it's just a
Great
way to
marketing.
like get people to actually both shill their bags but also be real about their
Yeah.
like day-to-day lives in
Yeah.
that format. So like I'd say like these are all examples of consumer social that we actually consume ourselves. Like, dude, the dating show
Yeah.
on Unmonday as well, like the love on
Yeah.
leverage. Like a lot of these things are actually stuff that keeps us up until whatever time it's at in our time zones, just to like tune into this collective
It's the
community. I
best
think
space. We work in the best industry, honestly.
yeah, so like all of this makes me more bullish than like, oh, like here's a peer-to-peer decentralized data storage layer that's powering like Microsoft and everyone else, and just raised 100
Yeah.
billion. Yeah, so like, yeah, that's how I feel. I think we're aligned there.
It's coming, man. It's coming. We're building the future of the internet for the people, by the people, you know? That's the exciting stuff. I do want to keep this moving on because I think we're actually a little bit over time, but if you're okay with it, if we can keep going a little
That's
bit
cool. Yeah,
longer.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
cool. Yeah, so I want to just chat about something around, and this is more maybe not a personal gripe, but something I've been thinking about and like we've chatted about kind of briefly, but put the spotlight on you is like narratives you're excited about and how Xeron's going to play a role. And I mean more specifically the fact that, um, just being honest, right? With Zerion, for example, one of the reasons I love it is you guys have such fast like bridging support. You add L3s and L2s, pretty much any EVM chain I can trade across. The challenge I've had is, of course, you guys used to have Solana at least tracking support, and now that's been done away with. But I believe there might be a future for those. You hinted at Solana, Cosmos, and others. But
Yeah.
curious, like, what are you guys bullish on, and how are you guys thinking about those, I guess, for the coming quarters, months, whatnot? Yeah.
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, I personally also have a gripe against not being able to see Solana, so I totally relate. And I think
Because
it's
I can
another.
only track some of my portfolio now.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
was one of those things where actually this is again coming back to what I said earlier, like we could either rely on an external provider and just build like
Yeah.
Solana support very easily, which the
Ah.
end user wouldn't care about. But this was
Hmm.
coming from a point where we wanted to build this infrastructure ourselves. Like I think it's one of those decisions where like it will come, but it will take more time and we will do it in a very robust way where it will
Yeah.
actually be more anti-fragile. So like that's one, like we do believe in this like multi-chain ecosystem, but
Yeah.
EVM has just been something that we've always been building on primarily. So I think still very much bullish on that space. um,
Of course.
yeah, I guess another area where we're incredibly focused on is it's weird. I don't want to say AI, but like Vitalik in January put out this piece of like the
Mm.
intersection of crypto and AI, and basically he talked about AI primarily like in the short term for security. So like transaction
Hmm.
simulation, scam detection, like auditing, like code, like bug bounties, all that. Right? That's where it makes most sense for like
Yeah.
it's like a very routine, like I guess like labor intensive task. Maybe it's one of those things that AI can help with the most. And we've already
Yeah.
done that working with like I'd say rather than building this in house, a lot of external vendors like Blockade is helping us with like identifying phishing domains. Internally now we're working on like notification spam like within Zerion. We don't want you to like
Mm.
you probably receive a lot more tokens than you think you do, but Zerion is filtering out for a lot of them. And we've built our own like machine learning models internally to like, so it's boring AI is what I'm trying to get at, which just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
helps you kind of be more secure as you go about doing things in this space. So that's one where we're incredibly bullish on because this helps across like the whole user journey, right? Like if you want to explore tokens and make sure you're finding the right tokens, AI comes in.
Yeah.
Like if make the decision to transact and not understand what you're doing and b not get hacked while doing it, like that's also where AI comes in. So I think that's another area that we're super super bullish on. Another one,
Oh yeah.
this is actually something that I think is like uh, almost like not our business, but is
Hmm.
one of the ideas that will cannibalize our business a bit is actually embedded wallets. I'm actually incredibly bullish on that, and I think as a company as
Mm.
well, we see like a lot of the tools and a lot of the I'd say like dApps that adopt embedded wallets are those that just want to almost like for take Privy for example, right? You don't even need to know there's a wallet underneath, and like many
Yeah.
companies, especially Web 2 or Web 2.5, that's the buzzword that came about previously. Companies would actually prefer to use such embedded wallets rather than have their users, have a MetaMask or Zerion or whatnot. So
Yeah.
like we're incredibly bullish on that. So like I think there's a way for us to work with such providers. Already we are with like the data and the API layer, just because
Yeah.
they still need to build out the wallet under the hood, whatever that looks like, and that's a better
Yeah.
distribution for us. So that's one as well, where I'd say like we have a lot more news coming out
Mm.
Q3 and Q4. Yeah,
Ooh.
I guess like
Okay.
finally this coming back, like what are big areas of growth for us? Honestly, I would say like this is one of those things that is a big gripe of ours internally as well. But like us being multi-platform also means that we have a
Yeah.
like we have this internal priority to make sure our iOS and Android, for example, have the same feature parity, or our macOS
Yeah.
app have the same feature parity. But what's crazy is that our iOS app has like one engineer and our Android app has two engineers. And compare that with Coinbase Wallet, for example, which has like I think 200 engineers on iOS and like
Yeah.
150 whatever on Android. Like for us, it's a big challenge to like I'd say like we're both excited because we've been able to do this in the way we've done by having
Yeah.
people. Everyone you meet at Zerion would be like basically their own startup. Like they have their own
Yeah.
self custodial kind of area of expertise and focus, and they're responsible for that. But like one of the things we're very excited for is actually onboarding more Web2 talent into the space. So like for Android and iOS, like I mentioned
Mm.
before, we've just recently hired quite a few new engineers from companies like
Yeah.
Revolut, Google, like Typeform, a lot of like
Yeah.
Web2 companies
Nice.
where they bring in solid like processes, which is lacking in a lot of companies that you see right now in Web3, where
Yeah.
like I think it's great to have Web3 experience, but it's also great to just get our transfer from other spaces. So a little bit of a tangent, but like we're actually excited about
No, it's
like
good.
this being a trend across the board of like, hey, like you actually value people interested in this space coming in and
Yeah.
join legitimate
Well,
companies.
this kind of fits into the whole. This was all over Twitter the past week, I guess, is what you're referring to, right? Where
Yeah,
everyone's having that narrative around should you hire someone that's crypto native versus someone
right.
who like from the outside coming in. And I think there's virtues to both, but I think you're right. Is like,
You want a
and I see
combination.
it. You want a combination, and that's why like just like from I can speak from personal experience, right? For Myosin, like as a DAO that does marketing and we build products, whatever, like our whole thing has always been, we want people who have experience, but we don't want only anon degens who don't know how to be professionals, don't know how to deal with the client, deal with these other things, but they have like the in-house expertise or like they're they're on the boots and on the ground, right? And at the
Yeah,
same time, sometimes you want people that are like corporate, maybe not too corporate, right? But they understand how to like work at a company and like talk to people and set meetings and like, there's that sweet spot that we're all looking for, I think, right? Is the best
yeah,
middle ground. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. To sum
Yeah.
it up, I kind of like
Anyway,
like
sorry. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's like I'd say it's really like people, product, processes. If I just wanted to summarize it into like a buzzword, right?
Ooh,
Yeah, that's really what I'm most excited about.
I love it. There's so much coming on. There's so much coming up the pipeline. I love it. And I'm excited for all of it, honestly, because I think the ecosystem is robust. I've always said it's personally my favorite wallet in terms of the experience. And I think as you guys start to build out integrations with other things, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Oh, I do have one lingering question actually, which was, something we talked about. I think a lot of this, the features and all these things that we've been chatting about tend to be a bit more maybe like Web3 native focused. So I'm curious about how, you're talking about embedded wallets, so that might play a role in this. But, I haven't really seen much, chatter or talk about kind of like Web2 or like brands or enterprise. Like, is that something that's on the radar? Or is it, you're really going to just continue this approach of focusing on the Web3 user, grow the market, and then eventually the other people will start to come in? Or how are you guys
Mhm.
thinking about that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we are. So this also changes, right? Like it changes based on what
No.
stage of like us ourselves as a product we're in and the market. But like we
Yeah.
really made a conscious decision a couple of years ago to like focus on Web3 citizens. So really like
Yeah.
maybe there's about 200,000 or so of like on-chain users who are people who work in the space, who are active in the space, interact with dApps, know what it means to have a self-custodial wallet. That's really the main focus. But you do raise a good point. Like we actually played, I played Crypto the game a couple of weeks ago, and this,
Hmm.
if you've
Yeah.
followed along, like it was like probably one of the craziest weeks, but also the most fun weeks I've had in crypto because I'm collaborating with, colluding, killing, like doing
Yeah.
everything on chain with like folks who are.
And just for people who may not know what crypto the game is, it's TLDR. It's like Survivor on Twitter and Telegram, and you buy NFTs, and there's a big prize pool at the end. It's like crypto survival. That's the easiest way to describe it for someone who may not know. But yes, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
No,
Yeah,
it's Crypto Survivor, and like this time, what's different is also they had sponsors, right? So like they had sponsors
yeah.
like Adidas, but they also had sponsors like Uniswap and Co-op. Like I think what really happened is like it's a Survivor game show where I also had a lot of like I made a lot of great friends. You know, like
Mhm.
our tribe had like the founder of Yuga Labs, like Bored Apes. We had like a ton of like OP people, Coinbase people. It's just interesting
Amazing.
seeing people, kind of both trying to coordinate in real life. But I also got a lot of insights on like, you know, there were a lot of Web2 people as well, like people who are like, oh, this is my day job. I'm in like like in a normal company, Salesforce or whatever. But I'm also a DJ. I'm also on chain. I'm also trying to,
Hmm.
hide this from my main job that I'm actually like doing stuff every day.
Secret allies hidden
No,
within the
literally.
organizations.
Yeah, so like I feel like in that sense, like it's almost like that's why I like to say Web3 citizens because like our target audience like is not restricted to a certain persona of people, but rather like what you do with like this your
Mhm.
spare time or with like both like as a main job or outside of your main job. So like yeah, just the crypto the game story was more to like show like how I just saw like a huge diversity of people who played, like, and a lot of
Mhm.
people are like, we even had like high school students who were just like literally like, community managers for some projects being like, oh, this is my like way to like, do BD with other people who I would never be able to do
Yeah,
BD with. Like, there was like a whole range of like, people who I interacted with, right? So like our target audience
absolutely
really
amazing.
anyone who played crypto the game, if that's like a simple way to like put it. Like we're
Yeah,
close to the team as well. Dylan actually like whitelisted a bunch of Zerion people initially, but like
yeah,
yeah, like if I want to just paraphrase, that is like our target audience. But I do see scope for collaborating with like Web2 companies. This is one big way to do that is the APIs. Like we've spoken to a bunch of fintech,
yeah.
for example, where a bunch of fintech companies, everyone wants to not just launch a chain but also launch a wallet. If before you launch a chain, that's kind of
Yeah.
like the trend I'm seeing. And launching a wallet, we've summarized the TLDR of why it's useful to
Well,
launch a
now you
wallet.
guys have a chain that other
Yeah,
people can have like priority access to or some
yeah,
immediate
there's
integration that
there.
simplifies all the other chains. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So like I think now that we have a chain, we'll have like a lot more both leverage and actual stuff to offer if you're a
Mm.
Web2 company or a dApp or whatnot to like integrate with us. So like that's probably somewhere where we can work pretty closely. And just like how Base launched on-chain summer, right, like we don't know what that on-chain summer is going to look like for us, because the only thing we
Yeah.
can say is like, oh, here's like 5 dApps that we're going to launch zero with, and they're
Yeah.
going to be like they're they're going to be playing their part in this like
Hmm.
puzzle that we're trying to build. But like what happens after, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of ways we could collaborate with Web2 brands. But like Web2 users, I'm not really sure. Like I
Yeah.
think there's still this uh,
Eventually. Yeah.
yeah, really.
There's too big a gap. And I think what we found in interacting with like Web2 brands, our thesis kind of is because we're working with a couple right now and we're talking and we're thinking, right? Is like my view on it is like Web2 brands, Web3 for most enterprise brands and large brands and people who have been experimenting, they're mostly marketing experiments. But we
Hmm.
haven't yet seen the wave of Web2 or like large enterprise corporates really begin integrating this technology in a more seamless way. So you're talking about account abstraction, you're talking about simplifying the process, right? Like that is where embedded wallets, whether it's Zerion or Privy or whoever else, is going to be a really important player in that ecosystem to simplify it. And
Hmm.
I think it's going to be something like the Web 2. You won't call it in, and I think we've said it, and you've said probably said, and we've all said it, which is like eventually in like 5, 10 years, we won't say in certain contexts, if we're talking tokenized loyalty or digital collectibles, you're not going to call it NFT or a token. Just be like, it's a point, it's a credit, it's a thing, but now it has real value and you can exchange it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So anyways,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
But ideally you don't even need to exchange any, like you don't need to go off chain, like you just
Yeah,
can
yeah.
always chain. Yeah, I feel like
We
that's
just need those
yeah,
gas fees to go down and that speed
yeah.
go up. Like
No, but that's
we'll
another thing.
get
I
there.
was using a Gnosis card in like Europe while I was in the UK,
Yeah,
right? I can just literally swap my USDC to like a Gnosis USDC, and I don't even need to go off chain. Like that's another tangent where I'm like,
amazing.
there's like probably a
Fully
future where
on chain.
yeah,
Yeah,
like literally like we're seeing this already, right? Like straight out of college or maybe even like teenagers having a wallet before they have a bank account. That was the talk of last cycle. I feel like now this
yeah,
cycle will probably take that even further with like you just receiving your first paycheck and doing whatever you want like on chain. So I feel like that's another space where me like in the US I can be bullish, but around the world I don't know. Like it's very country specific, right? So like in the US
yeah,
you're seeing a lot more experimentation there, but obviously there's also regulation and all that to deal with. So it's like yeah, it's a mixed bag.
yeah. It is. I can tell you right now, just a little bit like related and a
Yeah.
little plug, I guess, is like I'm currently here in Buenos Aires. Was at a conference, kind of
Was it?
not conference. Yeah, talking
Yeah, yeah,
about no. Yeah, yeah, because you said this is where you discovered it, right? Which is the funny thing. I
yeah.
was just like, yeah. So I've been here for about 6 weeks. I'm here for two more,
Nice.
but there's a dev pop-up city called the Moo, and it was
Yeah,
great. They had like people from StarkNet, Avalanche, like everyone like shilling their wares, right? And we love
yeah,
it. It's all good for everyone because devs are building more stuff on these things.
yeah,
Um, but a little bit of alpha here is actually the Protocol Labs team, and then some of the people from, I guess, like Zuzalu and whatnot came
yeah,
over because I think they heard about all the energy, and they're going to be having a pop-up city called Crecimiento in August, and then they're going to have a permanent hub. So, like talking about countries where the regulation is favorable, and I think it's fair, like they are talking to like literally the president, and like the government is libertarian, and there's a like I think what Juan from Protocol Labs was saying, he gave like this presentation when he was really saying is like there's this unique time right now where there's this new regulatory regime that has come in and that says
yeah,
like we don't know blockchain, but if you want to go experiment, like we're open to it. And like
yeah,
that's major because like if you could set that now and let it run for the next couple of years, even if the government changes, because that's the issue, right? Is like when political tides go back and forth,
yeah.
if you grab it now and build this momentum and build real use cases and
Good
build
stuff.
real companies,
Yeah,
it's major, you know,
yeah.
no matter what
Sure.
happens in politics.
No,
Yeah.
I love that you brought Mo and Zalo as well. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we've both been involved with in the last year or so, right? Like network states, professional communities that actually are making
Yeah.
like IRL impact. Yeah, I feel like um, if anything to be learned, like this is also like probably where I had the biggest like both like accelerated learning experience in person because like yeah like
Mm.
Juan was also there in ZooConnect, right, in Turkey, and
Hmm.
like you living with them and Vitalik and like understanding like kind of like what do
Amazing.
they do like every other day that like I didn't know Juan has like a big interest in like neuroscience. Like he gave us a whole presentation on like the future of neuroscience. Like it wasn't even like crypto
Uh,
related, right? So it's like
yeah.
yeah, I think like that's another incredible way to like actually um, iterate and like try out like social experiences. So think of FarCon, but an extended FarCon, right? So you've probably experienced
Yeah.
that. I'm kind of jealous that you actually made it out. Like I had a feeling that it would be great because it's also like I think half of the organizing group is like the Zalu group, right? But there's Edge
Yeah.
City,
Yeah.
I guess, coming up in.
There's a lot. There's so
Yeah,
much. Yeah.
it's crazy. Yeah, if anything, I would build something to keep track of all this and like actually connect people together. Yeah, that's like probably a
Someone
cool
should
part.
do that. Do it on side,
All right,
bacon and zero. I don't know.
another
Yeah.
plug. Yeah,
All right, we should start to wrap things up.
let's
I'm
do it.
really loving this conversation. I appreciate you staying a little bit longer. But let's the very last question really is actually just, you know, and you touched on it earlier, but just maybe we'll like kind of summarize it is like what's next on the horizon for you guys? Any alpha you can share, anything interesting? What should people be excited about and thinking about and be prepared for, I guess. Yeah.
No, great way to end this. But like, I'd say like use Zerion more. Like, there's a lot of like, I'd almost
No.
say like magic gifts that like we kind of have embedded into like the app and the user experience. Like, features that we will be releasing, but also more than features, I'd say like, um, as we launch this chain, as we prepare for unveiling this around ECC, there will be like the test net, right? So like, if you're a developer who's interested in like actually integrating with Zerion, but also more than integrating, like understanding more and helping us actually build the stack out. Like we're all yours to like actually chatting with you. And if you're a user, I'd say like the biggest alpha really is that like you just need to chill. You need to do nothing. The experience is going to actually massively improve for you. And yeah, like we kind of are already, I think, seeing this new wave of on-chain users coming in and giving us great feedback. So that's always what we're looking for.
It just gets better and better. We love it. We love it. All right. And then last bit here, rapid fire questions. Pretty straightforward. Just I'll ask a question. Don't think too hard. Answer. For them, we ask every single guest this one since this is our second season, 10th episodes. You're our 30th guest to answer these questions. So excited. So let's get into it. So pick one project, whether in Web3, AI, emerging tech, not including your own, that you're most bullish on.
Hmm. Oh, I mean, we just
And
talked about
if you
unknown.
feel like you have to, you can throw more than one. But like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll say I'm lonely. I'm biased, but like, yeah, I guess like there's a ton that I'm very bullish on. I love 0x people as well. So 0x people is another Zerion like app, but like very social focused. So 0x people
Mm,
and Lonely, both very social focused.
I love it.
These
I
apps
love
I
it.
use really. Yeah.
Important, important. This next one's my favorite. Biggest professional learnings over the past 12 months.
Hmm. We talked about this a bit with Zazalu and network states, but like I think
Yeah.
this is more of like a learning for me personally. Is just connect people or do things that connect people, whether it's hosting
Mm,
events, whether it's like being like a point person for some sort of like a niche expertise or skill, but like that
hmm
really like is one of those things that gives you most satisfaction, but also like will pay off like in ways you can never imagine in the future. So yeah, that's kind of
mm,
like one of the things I'd say. Like yeah, be a people connector in one way or another. If you don't
I
know
love it.
where to, yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's a good one. Next one. You have $1 million, maybe more if that's not enough for you. Make it 10. What would you go build today outside of and in the world of emerging tech? By the way, like, and assume like you've already taken your like 1 year sabbatical or whatever, right?
Sure,
Like
sure.
you go fuck off for a year, you're
Yeah,
having a
yeah,
good time, and now you're like, I'm hungry. I want to go build something else now. I can't
yeah,
go
yeah.
back to Zerion. What are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we've kind of talked about this a bit. Like, there's this opportunity, I think, for like, I've always worked on something that relates to discoveries or marketplaces, right? So, like, you're either like
Mm,
make something easier to access, or you're trying to like aggregate, a new market. So I'd say like, yeah, what we
hmm
talked about. I'd say like, there's DAOs, there's like that I'm part of, and you
Yeah.
yourself are like leader of a DAO. There's professional communities like that are not DAOs because they
hmm
don't have a token or a formal group, but they're also a community. Like my crypto the game tribe is a community, and this network state
Mm,
like that we talked about, like Moo or like
yeah.
Zoo, whatever other network state. I really think it's powerful. Like I would actually probably want to work on like yeah, like some sort of a social layer. Like I was thinking about this a bit more, but like I don't know.
Mm,
You use Glassdoor to vet like like what are cool professional jobs to like join, right?
yeah.
Like as an example, or you use like I don't know, like there's 100 platforms to find jobs to like vet professional organizations. Why not have something similar for this emerging space? I think that's a
Yeah.
cool idea. And I mean, side note here, but like I actually might work on this idea as a fun project.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like we just like have this project called DAOcentral.com that we've
Yeah.
that me and my friend built like 4 years ago, and we've kind of just left it dormant. But back then it was
I
like
think
this
I
aggregate.
remember that
Yeah,
if I'm not crazy.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and like
Oh,
I
that's
just looked
amazing.
at the stats the other day, and I was like, there's still like what, like 10,000 organic visitors just coming in, like purely from SEO, and I was like, maybe we should restart this project and like just literally make it like a public good. I think I would do that if I had $1 million. I could probably find a way to like monetize it, and
Yeah.
yeah, like it might be a fun project to take up down the road, but really just like going beyond DAOs because I feel like DAOs restrict you to like discards with the
Yeah.
token in a very funny way. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I think it's a funny thing because it felt to me like when we launched Myosin 2 years ago, like, yeah, everyone was so bullish on DAOs, but as
yeah,
someone who's deep in the trenches of building a DAO 24/7, I looked around and I was like, I don't think there are enough of us here to like really, it's almost like people trying to build B2B before there's enough bees to sell
yeah.
to, like, um, so, I mean, a lot of them, and it was such a cyclical thing, right, at the time. And I think now I have a lot of thoughts on DAOs. But anyways, we could go on for
No,
days.
there's
But
not enough. I think like there's not enough cross pollination of DAOs happening. Like that's
no,
another thing, right? Like even with Hydra Ventures and Social Graph Ventures, like we're
Yeah.
incubating DAOs ourselves because we can't find enough DAOs to invest in.
Yeah.
That's like a crazy problem to have. Like I thought this was a bigger space, but now we're having to recruit like DAO summoners to like Social
Yeah.
Graph Ventures. By the way, that's how we formed. We were like, there's no one that
Mm,
exists that are like a Web3 social DAO. Like we just
yeah.
gotta create this. So like that's another one of our missions. But like yeah, I'd say like it's kind of like a good problem to have, and hopefully it's better for you
Yeah.
guys as well. We'll be sending
Yeah.
more your way for sure.
I love it. I might have to hit you up actually, because there's obviously as a serial Taoist, there's a couple other
Yeah.
DAOs I'm involved in, and one of them, um, there's an idea for a fork and a relaunch with a different approach. Let's put it that way. But I'll hit you up.
Yeah,
Anyways,
for sure.
yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Okay, last question. Craziest predictions: Web3, AI, emerging tech, by end of year.
Yeah,
A lot of
I guess.
crazy stuff has already happened, but what's
Yeah,
coming up?
I've said a bunch of Web3 crazy stuff already, like also embedded walls and all that. Maybe we'll focus on like the emerging tech. Like one, so
Yeah.
I'm a big bull on this. Like I actually was using virtual reality co-working during the pandemic with my like Oculus with like super low resolution, like terrible experience, but it was still great. But like I have a Vision Pro. I really think that mixed reality is probably like something that could be really fun
Yeah.
as you see cheaper Vision Pro like products get to the market.
Hmm.
But yeah, I have a lot of friends here in San Francisco who are building mixed reality experiences. So like,
Yeah.
I'm bullish on that. I think like if you want me to make a prediction, we'd have like a you know mass consumer friendly like mixed reality product, whether it's a glass or whether it's another format that
Mm,
becomes mainstream like the iPhone by the end of this year. That's number one. Number two, like kind of like in parallel, um, this is alpha, but like I heard from a couple friends that they're pausing the launch of GPT-5. OpenAI will not launch
hmm.
GPT-5 until the election's done, which makes a lot of sense, but
Wow.
it kind of shows you how scary GPT-5 could be.
Yeah.
Like, I would say, like, we would probably have another bull market in AI with like agents, multimodal LLMs. Like, a lot of these features will, if GPT-5 comes to market, and I'm sure it will, be like
Yeah.
native. So, like, I'd say, like, right now, if you've noticed yourself, right, like, you've maybe you're not using AI as much. You're not using
Yeah.
GPT more. Is like kind of it feels like it's getting dumber, and obviously that's a sign that like it's actually time to be more bullish because there's something
Yeah.
happening on the scene. So yeah, I think like that's another space just in general that I think will kick off another mini AI hype cycle. Yeah,
I'm excited, man. I'm excited. And that's the crazy thing is like I feel like when we work in this industry where every day news crazy stuff is happening and new people are building new crazy things. And it's funny because then I'll go on my like Instagram, which
yeah,
is, I love the socials. I love the Web2 socials, ironically, even though Zuckerberg is the evil empire. Um, and then I like and then I go out to dinner and I see like what we call like our fiat friends, or I do anyways, the
yeah,
non-crypto people. And I love them to death and they're still obviously we're friends in different ways, but they don't understand. And it's crazy. I'm like, I feel like I'm living in two different worlds where we're over here building in this space and then you meet and then you hang out with your friends who want nothing to do with it and have nothing to do with it.
yeah.
But it's crazy when when you're trying to explain all this insane stuff that's happening daily that even we're having trouble keeping up with. So at the
Okay.
same time, I don't actually blame them because I'm like, if you're not already interested in space, how can you keep up? But then it's unfortunate because if you aren't aware, you may become either collateral damage or I don't know. But it's like, and we want everyone to win. It's like I'm trying to tell you this thing so you can, take advantage of it. But
Yeah, I
it's a
mean,
funny thing.
ideally,
Yeah.
I think the most we can do now is like trade against these signals when your friends are hitting you up
Yeah.
asking you what token to buy. That's when you sell, or you trade against
Yeah.
their emotions. Like I think beyond that, like it's not our job really to onboard people
Yeah.
except when they actually express interest. Like that's at least my opinion. So
Yeah.
like yeah, like that's
Yeah.
what I see. Even right now, right? Markets are down. This is when I'm DCing more, like not financial advice,
Yeah.
but like just generally, I think what we've learned to accept more. So I think as someone full time in the space, kind of like closing thought here, like we
Yeah.
we really live in a parallel reality, but I think it's time to like embrace that
Yeah.
reality and like
Yeah.
kind of like do stuff independent of like the big state or whatever. Like I sound very
Yeah.
like anarchist in this like in this closing remark. But, like yeah, I really think like we're now at a point where I'm glad that you can't keep track of everything happening in crypto. 5 years back, everything happening in crypto can be summarized by one guy building a newsletter in like one tweet.
Hmm.
No longer the case, right? So like in that sense, we sort of have to embrace this like evolution of a new space and like a new
I
sub
like it.
industry. Yeah, just go with it.
I'm into it. And I'll be honest, this is a very different take from what I've heard from most people, but I like it. And I do see a world in which these two worlds can exist of like it's almost because here's the thing though, if this world grows big enough, they're gonna collide in the end anyways, right? But
Yeah,
what I'm hearing from you is like this space, like don't worry about the other stuff for now, like focus on this. And when it gets big enough, they'll naturally come in anyways, and
of
then we'll
course.
all be happy, I guess, right? Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
I like that.
Whole-
It
Mhm.
makes sense. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're also like maybe biased with like network states and being exposed to all of this. I'm
Yeah.
going to like an event where Praxis is unveiling their new like government city and all that. Like, dude, like all of this sounds like if I talk to my dad about this, right? Like he's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, but like it's never gonna happen because governments are gonna shut it down. Like it's a very different like
Yeah.
mindset, and I don't blame them either, right? So it's like I feel like at some point you've got to almost like convince yourself that this can happen, and it makes more sense the more you think about it. The more you think about like we're more
Yeah.
closer to digital communities than our actual like passport community or whatever that looks like. Like it
Yeah.
just makes a lot more sense. So like I think my take is like probably yeah more of an exception rather than what like the
Yeah.
bandwagon would say.
But one day, man, we'll see what
I'm,
happens. It's all
I'm
gonna come
telling
together. Zero is gonna be part of it, I hear. Yeah.
you.
All right, perfect. We're gonna wrap this up. Last thing is, do you just wanna this is a place for you to show yourself. So where can people find you? Zerion, where do you want them to go? What should they do? Let the world know, and then yeah, we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, number one, Blake, you got to hit me up about DAOs after. But if you actually want to, if anyone wants to talk to
Yeah.
me about summoning a DAO, like how does like I guess like how do you organize people and capital in like a chaotic but like functional way? Like talk to me. That's number one. Number two, socials. I'm most active. Honestly, Telegram's where I'm the most active, funnily enough. But like, find me on Farcaster at ABI, and then we can go from there. Like, that's
Nice.
probably one I want to shill more. Yeah. Apart from that, always happy to meet IRL in San Francisco or wherever I am. So like, um, especially to talk about product or gem about stuff that we've just talked about here. So appreciate you having me on the pod.
Of course, man. Thanks for coming. I really loved hanging out when we were in Denver and all the online chats we've been having, and big fan of Zerion, and this was honestly one of my favorite conversations. We've run over like massively on time, and I love it.
Yeah.
I have no issue with it. Yeah.
No, I appreciate
So
it.
yeah, my friend, this has been great. Really love this conversation. Excited to put it out into the world and share your thoughts. And yeah, I'll see you online, and I'll see you hopefully in July at the next conference. Until then, have fun.
Cheers.
All right. Thank you so much. Ciao, ciao.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Etc. If you'd like to support us, please subscribe, give us a like, and tune in anywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you so much.